Attention passionate New York Giants fans. Latest news, something big is happening in the NFC East and it could change the game. We're talking about a direct impact on the New York Giants' path to another Super Bowl run, a power shift that could leave division rivals stumbling for years. We're bringing this to you firsthand. But before that, if you're a true New York Giants fan, subscribe to the channel to strengthen this passion even more. Show that you're also part of this family. Let's help each other reach 1,000 subscribers. Share with your friends and New York Giants fans. Let's get to the news now, folks. If you've been paying close attention to the NFL landscape lately, you've probably heard the buzz about the Green Bay Packers and their surprising decision to part ways with one of their most talented, yet most injury-prone players. Yes, I'm talking about Jair Alexander, the Pro Bowl cornerback who's been considered one of the best cover men in the league when healthy. But here's the thing. This move could have huge repercussions, especially for a team like the New York Giants, who are desperately looking to solidify their secondary and take a big step forward in their defensive performance. And that's exactly what we're diving into today. Should the Giants pursue Jair Alexander? Let's start by setting the stage. The Giants' secondary has been a point of concern for quite some time now. Over the past few seasons, it's been a mixed bag of promising young talent and some inconsistent performances. Players like Adoree Jackson, Xavier McKinney, and the rookies like Cordell Flott and T. Banks have shown flashes of potential, but consistency has been elusive. The secondary, in particular, has struggled with big plays allowed, missed assignments, and a lack of that true lockdown presence. It's no secret that the Giants' defense as a whole has been looking to elevate its level, and that's exactly why many fans and analysts have been asking the question, should they go all in on a player like Jair Alexander? Now, before we get into the pros and cons, let's talk about what makes Alexander such an attractive target. First and foremost, he's a two-time Pro Bowler, which means he's recognized league-wide for his talent and ability to shut down top receivers. When healthy, he's been considered one of the elite cover corners in the NFL, capable of taking away a team's best receiver and forcing quarterbacks to look elsewhere. His ball skills are impressive too, evidenced by his 5 interceptions season back in 2022, although that feels like a distant memory at this point. But it's not just his stats that make him desirable. It's his film, his instincts, and that rare ability to play press-man coverage in tight situations. However, there's a big caveat that can't be ignored: injuries. And this is where the Packers' decision to part ways makes a lot of sense from their perspective. Mark Murphy, the Packers' president, openly acknowledged Alexander's talent, but also pointed out the injury history that's haunted him over the last few seasons. To put it into perspective, Jair Alexander has missed a staggering 34 games over the past 4 seasons. That's nearly a full season's worth of games, folks. Knee issues, back injuries, groin strains, shoulder problems, these have all hampered his ability to stay on the field consistently. In 2021, he missed 13 games, and in 2023 and 2024 he was sidelined for 10 games each year. When you hear these numbers, it's pretty clear why Green Bay might be willing to move on, even from a player with such undeniable talent. And let's be honest, NFL teams are all about value, especially in the salary cap era. Jair Alexander, with his 2 Pro Bowls and elite skill set, isn't going to sign with a team just to be a depth player. He's going to want a starting role and a lucrative paycheck that reflects his talent. From the Giants' perspective, that's where things get tricky. They are currently operating with one of the lowest cap spaces in the league, around $3.8 million, according to Over the Cap. That's not enough to sign a player of Alexander's caliber without making some significant moves first. Releasing or restructuring contracts, trading players, or creating cap space through other means would be necessary. And even then, the financial logic might not add up, especially for a player with such a concerning injury history. But here's where things get really interesting. The Giants have been focusing on building a young, talented secondary that could potentially be among the league's best in the coming years. Players like Flott, T. Banks, and Drew Phillips are still developing, but they possess the raw talent and potential to become elite in their own right. The coaching staff and front office are clearly invested in that developmental path, giving these young players opportunities to grow and gain valuable experience. Adding a veteran like Alexander could, in theory, accelerate that process, or at least boost the overall confidence in the unit. But at what cost? Taking valuable snaps away from young players in the hope that Alexander can be a short-term solution might actually hinder their growth in the long run. Plus, we need to consider the Packers' perspective here. They're a well-run organization, always aiming for division titles and deep playoff runs. If they're willing to part with Alexander, it's because they believe the return on investment, both financially and in terms of team development, is no longer favorable. They might see him as a high-risk, high-reward player whose injury issues outweigh his upside. That's a common dilemma in the NFL. Do you hold on to a talented player who's unavailable most of the time, or do you cut ties and focus on building through draft and development? Green Bay's decision indicates they're leaning towards the latter, which opens the door for other teams like the Giants to explore. Now, let's not forget about the NFC East as a whole. This division has been fiercely competitive, with the Eagles and Cowboys consistently contending at the top. The Giants, under the new coaching staff and with the promising young core, are primed to make a leap. Adding a player like Alexander could be seen as a bold move to solidify that secondary, especially against high-powered offenses. But at the same time, it's a gamble. Are the Giants willing to invest heavily in a player with significant injury concerns? Or will they instead focus on developing their young talent and building a more sustainable, long-term defense? From a strategic standpoint, it's also about the team's identity. The Giants have always prided themselves on gritty, tough football, with a defense that can impose itself when healthy. Bringing in a player like Alexander could help them create more turnovers, lock down top receivers, and make life miserable for opposing quarterbacks. But can they afford the risk? That's the million-dollar question. And it's also about the coaching staff's confidence in their medical and training staff to keep a player like Alexander healthy. If they believe they can manage his injury risk and get consistent contributions, it might be worth the gamble. But if history has shown us anything, it's that injuries can be unpredictable, and sometimes they derail even the most talented players' careers. Looking ahead, this situation is a perfect example of how NFL teams constantly balance short-term gains versus long-term stability. The Giants, with their young core and cap space limitations, have to be smart about their moves. They don't want to overpay or take on players who might not be on the field consistently. Developing their draft picks and nurturing their young secondary seems to be the more prudent approach, especially considering the league's evolving offensive strategies that emphasize speed, agility, and big plays. But that doesn't mean they shouldn't consider all options. If the price is right, say, a manageable contract and a reasonable trade package, they might decide to pursue Alexander. It would send a clear message to the division and the league that the Giants are serious about contending now. It would also boost morale and confidence within the team, knowing they have a shutdown corner to complement the rest of their defense. On the flip side, if the cost is too high, or if the injury risk outweighs the potential benefit, it's better to stick with the young guns and keep building through the draft. One thing is certain, the NFC East is getting more interesting by the day. The Eagles are still powerhouse contenders, the Cowboys are always formidable, but the Giants are quietly assembling something special. They've made some smart offseason moves, like adding depth at linebacker, investing in offensive line talent, and grooming their young secondary. This Jair Alexander situation could be the cherry on top if they decide it's the right move. Or it could be a lesson in patience and development, which might serve them better in the long run. And let's not forget, the Giants are no strangers to making bold moves. Remember when they signed Leonard Williams or brought in Kadarius Toney? Those decisions showed a willingness to take calculated risks to improve the team. So, whether or not they pursue Alexander, it's clear that the front office is always looking for ways to elevate the roster. It's part of their DNA to be aggressive when the opportunity presents itself, especially when it could tip the scales in a division as competitive as the NFC East. Now, I want to take a moment to talk about the broader picture. The NFL is a league where injuries and luck play such a significant role. A team with a talented roster can suddenly be derailed by injuries, and that's why every GM and coach is constantly weighing risk versus reward. For the Giants, the decision to pursue or pass on Jair Alexander will reflect their confidence in their medical staff, their long-term plan, and their desire to contend now versus later. It's a complex puzzle, but one that's fascinating to watch unfold, especially for us passionate Giants fans who want to see this team reach new heights. So, in summary, should the Giants go after Jair Alexander? Well, from a talent perspective, it makes a ton of sense. He's an elite cover corner when healthy, and he could instantly upgrade a secondary that's still finding its footing. But from a cap and health perspective, it's a risky move. The Giants have to decide if they're willing to take that gamble, or if they prefer to stay patient, develop their young players, and trust that their defense will improve organically. Either way, this situation is a reminder of how dynamic and unpredictable the NFL can be and why every offseason is so critical. Pause here just for a second. If you want the YouTube algorithm to keep recommending the latest New York Giants news to you, it's super important that you leave a like on this video. Go ahead, it's quick and it makes a big difference. Thank you. Now let us continue with the big reveal. And now, New York Giants fans, I want to hear from you. What's your take on this potential pursuit of Jair Alexander? Do you think it's a smart move for the Giants, or should they pass and focus on their young core? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Your opinion matters so much to us and to the Giants. And don't forget, I'll be back soon with more updates, so stay tuned for the latest Giants news and analysis. We're in this journey together, and I believe that with the right moves, this team can surprise everyone and finally make that deep playoff run we've all been dreaming of. Keep the faith, stay passionate, and as always, let's go Giants.